Filipinos are phenomenal at creative. Graphic design, video editing, content creation. They do a really good job with the creative. Now, there could be reason, I'm not selling the Filipino person from a DNA perspective is better at this, right? There's probably like an anthropological reason. If I had to guess, I'd say that like 99 Designs came into the Philippines, started paying a bunch of graphic designers, and so more kids started taking graphic design courses. But if you go to the Philippines, you're going to find creatives more easily.
Need Upwork, Fiverr for that, for finding them initially? Because I tried to pull our graphic design person in Pakistan actually from Fiverr, and I got flagged. I even tried to word it in a way. I was like, hey, we have a list of clients who might want your services as well. Should I send them to you outside? Or how can I send them to you, or something like that?
Good point.
And like
question.
Fiverr,
that's so funny.
Fiverr's like,
you
cannot.
You want to look for job
that.
posting boards that are specific to the geography. So, like for Pakistan, I use Rosie.pk. For the Philippines, I use OnlineJobs.ph. For Latin America, I use RemoteCo.com. I love Latin America, by the way. Like, it's my favorite, and I like Latin America because they've got names that we can pronounce, accents that aren't repellent to my clients, and they're generally speaking close to our time zones. I also love Canadians. Like, you don't think like, if you think about outsourcing, you never think about Canadians. The interesting thing about Canadians, though, is if I pay $50K US, it's like paying $65K Canadian, and they're not worried about healthcare. And it's cold. They can't go outside. All they can do is work. And they're the kindest, hardest working people. I've got this whole theory about cold climate people, incidentally. I just think that they're harder working than all the rest of us because it's like an epigenetic phenomenon. Like, they had to survive, So you can go elsewhere and you can find some really phenomenal talent. But you've got to crack the code on where that talent exists. And we're going to get a little racist in this conversation. You ready? In my personal experience, Filipinos are phenomenal at creative. Graphic design, video editing, content creation. They do a really good job with the creative. Now, there could be reason, I'm not selling the Filipino person from a DNA perspective is better at this, right? There's probably like an anthropological reason. If I had to guess, I'd say that like 99 Designs came into the Philippines, started paying a bunch of graphic designers, and so more kids started taking graphic design courses. But if you go to the Philippines, you're going to find creatives more easily. I really like Indians and Pakistanis when it comes to things like web development, software engineering, coding, programming. But with the Filipinos, you have a trade-off. They're very family-oriented. It's hard to get them to work U.S. hours. It's really difficult. Indian Pakistanis, late for everything. If they tell you, Friday at noon, it's Monday at 3. And so, and they have a million holidays. Like, dear God in heaven, the number of holidays that Indians have blows me away. And so you end up having to kind of figure out like these idiosyncratic environments. And if you get too frustrated with it, you're just going to throw in the towel. But if you kind of crack the code and figure out, okay, here's how we're going to work together, then you have the opportunity to avail this phenomenal resource that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Eastern Europeans won't do things the wrong way. If you tell an Eastern European programmer, most brilliant programmers I've ever worked with in my entire life, by the way, but if you say, hey, the client wants the square to be a circle, I know the square needs to be a square. Like, I know that, like, traditionally speaking, the square should be a square. Client wants it to be a circle. Let's just make it a circle. They're not going to do it. They will not, cannot, shall not do anything the quote unquote wrong way. And they don't care if you lose the client. And so you have to realize that you're going to go up against like this petulant, obtuse bull in order to get anything done. But that also means that everything's done right the first time and you don't have to check it. So anyway, again, I'm sure I'm going to get canceled for everything that I just said. I have a whole bunch of opinions about, how different cultures yield different results, but you get to go figure that out for yourself as it pertains to your business.
I think it's great. I think it has to be said by someone, and I love that you have the courage to say it. So, and the voice to do so, and the no care filter. So, thank you for for doing that. I have one final question on the business side of things, and then I'd like to kick it to a whole new paradigm, which is your parenting rules that I think I was just blown away with when you mentioned them inside of the Firm of Dad Summit. But underneath the umbrella of business, the automation, I know we hit on the delegation a lot, and you also said the automation. And I just want to click on that real quick because we have one of our private community is called the Automate, Delegate, Systemize. Like, that's our group. So we have an operator to owner program, and our funnel to that program is automate, delegate, systemize in order to become an owner and not an operator. So I'd love for you just to kind of jam for a moment on the automation component. Like, our big one, like we teach our clients, is Zapier. And I'm sure there's like everything else under the sun of a lot of different tools and technologies and things. So if you just kind of riff for just a moment on how do you find the most qualified automations? What are some questions that you might ask or strategies under the umbrella of automation that maybe you've learned and you could offer some wisdom around that?
Yeah. So first of all, Zapier is a really good one. I think Zapier is the key to the internet. I think Zapier should be 10 times what they charge. It's an unbelievable tool. Um, you need to understand the way that this is going to sound condescending when I say it. You need to understand the way that computers work, which is very, very, very basic, by the way. It's if this, then that, except when. If this, then that, except when. And then you need to take that paradigm and apply it to all the tasks that you or your staff happen to be doing. And what you will find is, again, if you've niched down properly, especially, there's a bunch of if this, then that, except when. Well, if you have an if this, then that, except when, you can automate the shit out of that. Now, maybe the cost to automate it exceeds the value of the automation, and that's fine. But that's generally not the case, especially if you're running a business at scale. And with Zapier, you can build your if this, then that, except when across almost any platform. So it's hard for people to think that way if they're not used to thinking that way. And it's one of those things where it snowballs. You know, what's I think this comes from Gary Keller too, but a domino can knock over a domino twice its size. And so by like 36 dominoes, you start at 2 inches and you end up with the Eiffel Tower or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's what needs to happen here is you need to just start small. Go automate something really small. And sometimes that's just in Gmail. If you are constantly waking up and archiving or deleting certain emails, go build a Gmail filter that says anytime an email comes from this person or comes with this subject line, archive it or forward it or do this thing. Go learn Gmail filters. And all that does, it's not really going to help you. It saves a couple of seconds a morning, but it primes you psychologically because it's if this, then that, except when. And then once you've done that thing, now you're going to be like, well, wait a minute. If I can filter this, then I can do that. And then that little domino is going to knock over a bigger domino and so on and so forth. And you've trained your mind to start thinking in terms of automation.
That's a great response. Andrew,
it's so good. And it's exactly what we've been talking about. So this is spot on with everything that we teach. And you are correct that most entrepreneurs don't think that way, especially because it's kind of, they start as a one man or one woman show and they're doing everything. And then they just, it starts to kind of grow. And then the next thing you know, they kind of just have this ball of yarn and everything is twisted and turned around. But it's like, how do we actually McDonald'sify your business so that there's process and we really are putting people through the ideal workflow? And like to your point earlier, where it's like, you can pretty much automate anything. I always tell people, if you can dream it, we can build it in terms of automation. 99% of the time, that's what I've found. So I think that's awesome. One of the things that I wanted to make sure we definitely got into this conversation, and by the way, I hope, again, listener, that your face is already sufficiently melted, but prepare for additional melting of your facial features. Because when you talked about parenting and the rules you have for your kids and how you teach them and kind of like the curriculum that you're putting them through, I like to think that I'm a decent dad, but when I heard stories that you were sharing, I was like put to shame, to be honest. So I just want you to know that. And also I would love for you to share kind of how are you walking through these rules for life or whatever that curriculum is called for you and your family, and talk about the principles that you bring to your kids, because it was super inspiring to the entire room.
Yeah, it stems from what I would consider to be a pretty significant fail point on my end, which is I have zero theological commitments. I was raised Southern Baptist, and we were abused by the Bible. So it's and that's not meant to be a pejorative. I understand the value in it, and I miss it, and I wish I had it, and I don't. So I'm not here to lob any grenades at anybody that has any religious commitments, because I envy it, but I don't have that, and it didn't bother me as much until I had kids. Because religion is it's a study as to how to act. How should we be? And I didn't have an answer for him. I didn't like what I was taught. I didn't like what it did to me. It was pretty shaming. But there's no alternative. All the other religions are just kind of the same story with a different color. I hope that's okay to say. I'm not trying to be offensive. And so you start to kind of expand out, and you look at alternatives, and I got really nihilistic there for a minute, which is a terrifying place to be psychologically. And so I came back and I thought, as a stopgap measure, until I figure out what I believe, I at least need to give my children some principles. And so that was the genesis of the rules. And I took a lot from Jordan Peterson, and I think that's going to offend a lot of people too. I call him my digital dad. I really love that man dearly and deeply. And and he has his rules for life. And it's interesting because I started offering my children, or started writing the rules before I read his books, but the first three come from him. It's what's the most important thing, and it's Pavlovian in nature. It's prompt response.